I stood frozen in the dim light of Asheville High's parking lot, my breath catching as Elliot Harper's fist hovered an inch from my face, his eyes blazing with a rage I hadn't seen coming. "You don't belong here, freak," he spat, his 6'3" frame towering over me, the crowd of his friends jeering behind him. "I'm Lena Carter, a 17-year-old black girl, 5'7", with braids pulled tight and a heart pounding but steady." I'd only been in Asheville, North Carolina, for 2 weeks, but I knew this moment, January 15, 2025, wasn't about a fist. It was about who I was, and who they thought I couldn't be. I didn't flinch, didn't step back, just met his gaze, my dad's voice echoing in my mind, "Your strength isn't in swinging, Lena. It's in standing." Elliot's hand dropped, but his glare promised this wasn't over, and as I walked away, the weight of their stares burned into my back, a cliffhanger I hadn't written but had to live. I wasn't supposed to be here, not in Asheville, a city of 90,000 nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, known for its art and breweries but not for welcoming folks like me. My mom, Dr. Vanessa Carter, had taken a job as the first black cardiologist at Mission Hospital, and though the staff clapped at her welcome ceremony, no one helped us find a house. We settled in a quiet neighborhood, and I enrolled at Asheville High, a 1,000-student school where football ruled and outsiders were noticed. The hallways buzzed with whispers the first day I walked in, my sneakers squeaking on the tile, my backpack heavy with books and the weight of being different. "She's from Charlotte," someone murmured, as if that explained why my skin didn't match theirs. I kept my chin up, my expression calm, because I'd learned early, 3 schools, 3 cities, that reacting gave power to those who wanted to break you. My power was in my stillness, a quiet that spoke when I didn't. Elliot Harper was the storm I hadn't expected. Captain of the football team, son of the school's superintendent, he moved through the 120-foot cafeteria like he owned it, his blonde hair catching the light, his smile charming teachers but chilling peers. He wasn't just popular, he was a force, his authority built on fear disguised as charisma. His crew, Mason, all muscle and quick temper, Quinn, a gossip with a venomous tongue, and Riley, silent but watchful, orbited him like planets. That first week, I sat alone at a corner table, sketching in my notebook, when Elliot leaned over, his shadow blocking the sun. "This ain't Charlotte, artist girl," he said, his voice low but loud enough for his table to laugh. I didn't look up, just kept drawing, my pencil steady. His jaw tightened, and I felt the air shift, like I'd challenged him by existing. Inside, my stomach twisted, but I remembered my dad, a taekwondo instructor before cancer took him, teaching me to redirect force, not meet it head-on. I wasn't here to fight, but I wasn't here to disappear either. I found a lifeline in the debate team, a small group of 8 kids who met in a cramped classroom after school. I'd joined to sharpen my voice, to turn the thoughts I kept inside into arguments no one could ignore. Ms. Evelyn Brooks, the coach, was a no-nonsense woman with gray streaks in her hair and eyes that saw through excuses. She paired me with Aisha, a sophomore who stuttered but burned with passion when she spoke. "You've got fire, Lena," Ms. Brooks said after I argued for equity in school funding, my words steady despite the knot in my chest. I started writing speeches at night, my room lit by a single lamp, pouring my frustration into lines about justice and belonging. It was my armor, a way to fight without fists, to prove I was more than the whispers that followed me. Elliot's attacks grew sharper. By week 3, Mason shoved me in the hallway, his shoulder slamming mine, books scattering across the 50-foot corridor. "Move it, dang it," he growled, but I knelt, gathered my things, and walked on, my pulse racing but my face calm. Quinn was crueler, spreading lies that I'd been expelled from my last school for starting fights. "She's trouble," I overheard in the bathroom, and though it stung, I didn't correct them. Words were wind, my dad used to say, and I wasn't here to chase breezes. But the weight of their judgment pressed harder each day, and I felt it most in the cafeteria, where I sketched murals, bright, swirling designs of hope and resistance, knowing no one would see them. Elliot watched me, his eyes narrowing, like my refusal to react was a personal insult. He wanted fear, and I wouldn't give it to him. I found solace in a mural art project at the River Arts District, a 300-foot stretch of warehouses turned galleries. I volunteered on weekends, painting alongside Ms. Rosa, a 60-year-old artist with dreadlocks and stories of Asheville's civil rights marches. They called us trouble too, she said, her brush steady as she painted a figure reaching for the sky. But trouble can change things. Her words sank deep, and I started sketching murals for the project, designs of hands breaking chains, faces lit by courage. It was my rebellion, quiet but bold, a way to claim space in a city that didn't yet know me. At school, though, the pressure didn't ease. One day, I opened my locker to find my debate notes torn, scattered like confetti. Quinn smirked from a distance, and I felt a flash of anger, my hands trembling as I gathered the pieces. I wanted to shout, to demand why, but I breathed deep, my dad's voice grounding me, choose your battles, Lena. I stuffed the notes in my bag and walked to class, Elliot's gaze burning into me, his frustration palpable. The drama peaked one afternoon in the debate room. I was practicing a speech, my voice rising as I argued for representation, when Elliot and Mason burst in, uninvited. What's this, your little soapbox? Elliot sneered, snatching my notes. My heart raced, but I stepped forward, calm, saying, give them back. He laughed, tearing a page, and Ms. Brooks intervened, her voice sharp, out, now. They left, but Elliot's eyes locked on mine, promising more. That night, I practiced taekwondo in my backyard, a 40-foot patch of grass, my kicks precise, my mind racing. I wasn't afraid of Elliot's fists, I was afraid of what his hatred meant, of the way it echoed the world's older, deeper cruelties. I thought of Ms. Rosa, of my dad, of the mural I'd paint one day, and I knew I couldn't let him win, not by fighting, but by standing taller. As I walked home from the mural project that weekend, the sun dipping low, I heard footsteps behind me in a 150-foot alley near the school. My pulse quickened, but I kept my pace steady, senses sharp. You think you're untouchable, don't you? Elliot's voice cut through, closer now, Mason and Quinn at his side. I turned, facing them, my backpack heavy but my stance light, ready to move. Elliot stepped forward, his face twisted with something beyond anger, fear, maybe, of losing the control he'd always had. This town doesn't need you, he said, his voice low, trembling. I didn't speak, just held his gaze, my silence a shield, my dad's lessons my sword. The air crackled, and I knew this moment would define everything. What I'd face, who I'd become, and whether Asheville would ever see me as more than a stranger. The alley standoff lingered in my mind like a bruise you don't notice until you press it. I'd walked away from Elliot Harper and his crew that evening, my silence holding them at bay, but I knew Asheville High wasn't done testing me. I'm Lena Carter, a 17-year-old black girl, 5'7", with braids and a heart that carried my dad's taekwondo lessons like a torch. 2 weeks into my new life in Asheville, North Carolina, I was still the outsider, my presence a spark in a school of 1,000 students who preferred their world unchanged. Elliot, the 6'3" football captain, had made it clear I was his target, his charm masking a fear of losing the throne he'd built on intimidation. But I wasn't here to topple kings. I was here to survive, to carve out a space where I could be Lena, not the trouble they whispered I was. Each day at school felt like walking a tightrope. In the 120-foot cafeteria, I sat alone, sketching murals in my notebook, bright swirls of hands reaching across divides, while eyes darted my way. Elliot's crew didn't approach again, not yet, but their presence loomed. Mason, with his broad shoulders and quick temper, glared from their table, cracking his knuckles like a warning. Quinn, the schemer, whispered to a group of girls, her smirk sharp as she spread lies about my past. She got kicked out of Charlotte for starting fights, I overheard one say, and though it stung, I kept sketching, my pencil a lifeline. Riley, the quiet one, just watched, his stillness unnerving, like he was waiting for a signal. I didn't react, because my dad taught me that giving in to anger was like handing over your power. Inside, though, my chest tightened, the weight of their judgment heavier than my backpack. I poured that weight into the debate team, where I found my voice. In MS. Evelyn Brooks's classroom, I argued about systemic inequities, my words sharp and steady despite the nerves coiling in my stomach. Aisha, my debate partner, was a sophomore with a stutter but a fire that burned brighter than her hesitations. "You make me want to speak louder," she said after we won a practice round, her smile shy but real. I smiled back, feeling a flicker of belonging. MS. Brooks watched us, her gray-streaked hair pulled tight, her eyes catching the way I braced myself before speaking, like I was ready to dodge more than arguments. "You're not just debating, Lena," she said one afternoon. "You're claiming your space." Her words hit deep, and I wondered if she saw the storms I carried, the ones I hid behind my calm. Outside school, the mural project in the River Arts District became my sanctuary. On Saturdays, I painted alongside MS. Rosa, her dreadlocks swaying as she added bold strokes to a 300-foot wall. She'd marched for civil rights in the 60s, and as we worked, she shared stories of standing firm against hate. "They called us agitators," she said, her voice steady. "But we were planting seeds." I showed her my mural sketch, a figure breaking free from chains, eyes lifted to a starlit sky, and she nodded, her hand on my shoulder. "That's your truth, Lena. Paint it." I did, each brushstroke a defiance, a promise to myself that I wouldn't let Asheville erase me. Back home, in my 40-foot backyard, I practiced taekwondo, my kicks slicing the air, my dad's voice guiding me, "Redirect, don't destroy." The movements grounded me, but they couldn't quiet the growing tension at school. Elliot's next move came subtly, like a snake coiling before it strikes. He didn't confront me directly. Instead, he used the school newsletter, a monthly paper run by Quinn's friend, Sophie. An article appeared, anonymous but dripping with Quinn's venom, calling me a disruptive influence who clashed with school values. It mentioned my questionable history in Charlotte, twisting lies into half-truths. Kids stared as I walked the halls, their whispers louder now, some avoiding me, others smirking. My debate notes went missing from my locker, replaced with a scrawled note. "Go back to Charlotte, freak." My hands shook as I crumpled it, anger flaring, but I breathed deep, picturing my dad's steady hands. I didn't tell Ms. Brooks, didn't run to the principal. I rewrote my notes, my handwriting fiercer, each word a refusal to break. Elliot's anger wasn't just about me, it was about what I represented. He was the golden boy, son of the superintendent, used to bending the school to his will. Teachers overlooked his tardiness. Students laughed at his jokes, even the cruel ones. But I didn't laugh, didn't bow, and that unnerved him. I saw it in his eyes when he passed me in the 50-foot hallway, his charm cracking to reveal something raw, fear, maybe, that his power wasn't absolute. He needed me to flinch, to prove he still ruled, but my silence was a mirror, showing him the fragility he hid. His crew fed off his unease. Mason's shoves grew harder, one knocking my sketchbook to the floor, pages splaying open. "Oops, dang it," he said, grinning as I knelt to gather them. Quinn's rumors spread wider, claiming I'd been in serious trouble back home. Riley's silence felt heavier, his gaze calculating, like he was measuring how far Elliot would go. I countered with action, not words. At the debate team's open mic night, I performed a speech about representation, my voice rising as I spoke of voices silenced by fear. The 200-seat auditorium was half full, but Aisha clapped loudest, her eyes shining. A few students nodded, and for a moment, I felt seen, not as the trouble, but as Lena. I also proposed a taekwondo demonstration for the school's talent show, a chance to show strength without violence. Ms. Brooks approved, but when I posted flyers, they were torn down, Quinn's handwriting on one, nobody cares. My heart sank, but I reprinted them, taping them higher. At the mural project, I painted faster, my figure's chains now half broken, Ms. Rosa's voice in my ear, "Keep going, child." Her belief steadied me, but the school felt like a tightening noose. The drama escalated one lunch period. I was sketching when Elliot approached, alone, his usual swagger muted. "You think you're untouchable, don't you?" he said, his voice low, almost personal. I looked up, my pencil still, and saw something new in his eyes, not just anger, but desperation, like he needed to prove something to himself. "I'm just trying to get through the day," I said, my first words to him, calm but firm. He leaned closer, his breath hot. "You're making it hard for everyone." Before I could respond, Mason appeared, slamming my table, my water bottle tipping over. "Keep drawing, artist girl," he sneered, and they walked away, the cafeteria buzzing. I mopped up the spill, my hands steady but my mind racing. Elliot wasn't just bullying me, he was fighting a war within himself, and I was the battleground. That night, I stood in my backyard, practicing taekwondo under the stars, my kicks sharper, my heart heavy. I thought of my dad, who'd faced his own battles as a black man in a world that tried to shrink him. "You don't need their permission to be," he'd said, and I clung to that. But at school, the pressure was relentless. Ms. Brooks caught me after debate practice, her eyes searching. "You're carrying a lot, Lena," she said. "Don't carry it alone." I nodded, but I didn't know how to share the weight of being the only one who looked like me, the only one Elliot hated for existing. As I left, I heard footsteps in the 100-foot parking lot again, quicker this time. I turned, my stance ready, and saw Elliot's silhouette, his crew behind him, their shadows stretching long. "This ends soon, Lena," he called, his voice a promise, not a threat. My pulse thundered, but I held my ground, knowing tomorrow would bring a fight I couldn't avoid. Not with fists, but with the strength I'd been building all along. The threat in the parking lot clung to me like damp air, Elliot Harper's words, "This ends soon, Lena," echoing as I walked into Asheville High the next morning. I'm Lena Carter, a 17-year-old black girl, 5'7", with braids and a resolve forged by my dad's taekwondo lessons. 3 weeks in Asheville, North Carolina, had taught me that silence was my shield, but it was also a spark, igniting Elliot's desperation to break me. He was the 6'3" football captain, his power rooted in fear, and my refusal to bend threatened the kingdom he'd built. I wasn't here to dethrone him, I was here to exist, to be Lena in a school of 1,000 students who saw me as an intruder. But existence was rebellion in a place like this, and as I stepped through the 50-foot hallway, whispers trailing me, I felt the storm gathering, ready to test every ounce of my strength. Elliot's campaign intensified, but it wasn't just taunts now. It was strategy. His crew, Mason, all brute force, Quinn, with her poisonous rumors, and Riley, whose silence hid calculations, moved like wolves circling prey. In the cafeteria, I sat sketching murals, my pencil tracing figures breaking free, when I noticed kids glancing at their phones, then at me. Quinn had struck again, this time through a viral video. Someone had recorded my debate team speech on representation, but it was edited, my words spliced to sound aggressive, captioned. "New girl stirring trouble at AHS." The video spread across social media, racking up 2,000 views by lunch. "She's always so angry," a girl muttered nearby, and my chest tightened, not with fear but with the ache of being misread. I wanted to explain, to shout that I was fighting for fairness, but my dad's voice steadied me, "Let your actions speak, Lena." I kept sketching, my lines bolder, but inside, I felt the weight of eyes judging a version of me I didn't recognize. The debate team became my anchor. Ms. Evelyn Brooks, our coach, saw the video and called me in after practice. "They're trying to rewrite you," she said, her gray-streaked hair catching the light, her voice firm but kind. "Don't let them." I nodded, my throat tight, and Aisha, my partner, squeezed my hand. You're stronger than they know, she said, her stutter gone in that moment of conviction. We planned a new speech for the regional competition, one about resilience, and I poured my heart into it, writing late into the night, my lamp casting shadows on my words. Aisha and I practiced in the 200-seat auditorium, her passion lifting me, and for the first time, I imagined my voice reaching beyond Asheville, beyond the lies. But school wasn't a stage I could control, and Elliot's next move cut deeper than I expected. He targeted my mural project. I'd submitted a design for a school-wide art contest, a chance to paint a 100-foot wall outside the gym, my sketch of hands weaving a tapestry of unity. The contest was public, votes tallied online, but Quinn hacked the system, flooding it with fake votes for another design, a bland mascot logo. My entry, leading at 500 votes, plummeted to last place overnight. "Tough luck, artist girl," Quinn said in the hallway, her smirk vicious. I stood by my locker, staring at the contest website on my phone, my mural reduced to a footnote. Anger surged, hot and sharp, but I breathed deep, picturing Ms. Rosa at the River Arts District, her steady hands painting freedom. "They can't steal your vision," she told me, and I clung to that, sketching a new design in my notebook, one of roots breaking stone, a promise to myself that I'd keep creating, no matter what. Elliot's desperation grew personal. I saw it in the way he watched me, not just with anger but with a need to prove he was untouchable. He wasn't just fighting me, he was fighting the cracks in his own image. His dad, the superintendent, expected perfection, and Elliot's charm, his easy smiles, his game-winning passes, hit a boy terrified of falling short. My presence, my calm, exposed that fear, and he hated me for it. In the 120-foot cafeteria, he didn't approach, but his crew did. Mason knocked my sketchbook off my table, pages fluttering, and Riley picked one up, studying it before tossing it back. "You're wasting your time," he said, his first words to me, quiet but heavy. I gathered my pages, my hands steady, but my mind raced. Riley's silence wasn't loyalty to Elliot, it was doubt, and that made him dangerous. Ms. Brooks sensed the storm. After debate practice, she pulled me aside, her eyes searching. "You're disciplined, Lena, but they're pushing hard. Be ready." Her warning echoed as I walked to the mural project that weekend, painting with Ms. Rosa under a gray sky. "Trouble finds the ones who shine," she said, her brush steady. "But you're built for it." I painted my figure's eyes, bright with defiance, and felt my resolve harden. At school, I proposed a taekwondo demonstration for the art contest's closing ceremony, a way to show strength without harm. Ms. Brooks approved, but the flyers I posted vanished, Quinn's handwriting on one. "Nobody wants this." I reprinted them, my jaw tight, knowing the real fight was coming. The climax hit on a chilly afternoon, the 120-yard football stadium packed with 300 students, their phones out, ready to record. Elliot had orchestrated it, spreading word of a showdown during a pep rally break. I'd been sketching in the bleachers when he took the field, his voice booming, "Let's see if the new girl's as tough as she thinks." The crowd buzzed, nervous and eager, and I felt every eye on me, a weight heavier than my backpack. Ms. Brooks stood near the sidelines, her arms crossed, her nod subtle but clear, "You've got this." I stepped onto the grass, my sneakers firm, my heart pounding but my stance light. Elliot squared his shoulders, his crew behind him, Mason grinning, Quinn filming, Riley unreadable. "Show us what you've got, Lena," Elliot taunted, his voice laced with desperation, not confidence. I stopped 3 feet from him, the crowd hushing, and spoke, my voice steady, "I don't fight people who need to prove they're enough." The words landed like a thunderclap, sharp and final. Gasps rippled through the stands, followed by laughter, not at Elliot, but at the truth I'd laid bare. His face flushed, his fists clenched, and he lunged, his punch wild, driven by the fear I'd exposed. I didn't strike back. I moved, a single taekwondo sidestep, my shoulder tilting just enough to let his fist slice air. His momentum betrayed him, and he stumbled, falling hard on the turf, the thud echoing louder than the crowd's roar. Laughter swelled, chaotic and free, not mocking his fall but celebrating the moment he'd been undone, not by violence, but by my refusal to play his game. I stood above him, not triumphant, just present, my breath even. Elliot rolled onto his side, his face burning, his hands digging into the grass. The crowd's phones captured it all, and I knew the video would spread, not the lie Quinn crafted but the truth. I hadn't touched him. Ms. Brooks's eyes met mine, her nod a quiet salute. Aisha clapped from the bleachers, her smile wide, and for a moment, I felt lifted, not by victory but by the clarity of who I was. But as I walked off the field, Elliot's glare followed me, his silence heavier than his taunts, a promise that this wasn't the end. I knew then that Asheville High was shifting, but so was the battle, and the next fight would demand more than silence, it would demand everything I had. The laughter from the football field followed me like a ghost, not mocking but heavy, as if Asheville High had exhaled something it had been holding too long. I'm Lena Carter, a 17-year-old black girl, 5'7", with braids and a heart shaped by my dad's taekwondo wisdom. A month into my life at this 1,000-student school in Asheville, North Carolina, I'd stood my ground against Elliot Harper, the 6'3" football captain whose power crumbled when I sidestepped his punch and called him out. Not with fists, but with truth. I'd said, I don't fight people who need to prove they're enough, and his fall on the 120-yard turf shifted something in the air. But as I walked through the 50-foot hallways the next day, my sketchbook clutched tight, I knew change wasn't a victory lap. It was a fragile seed, and I wasn't sure if it'd take root or wither under the weight of a school still learning to see me. Elliot's absence was the first sign. His locker, once a shrine of football stickers and scrawled notes, stood empty, its nameplate gone, the janitors wiping away his trace with quiet indifference. Whispers spread by lunch, he'd transferred to a private school in Raleigh, his dad pulling strings to save face. I sat at my corner table in the 120-foot cafeteria, sketching a mural of roots weaving through stone, and felt no triumph, only a quiet ache. Elliot hadn't just lost a fight. He'd lost the myth he'd built, the one that made kids part like waves when he walked. His crew, Mason, Quinn, and Riley, drifted apart. Mason kept his head down, his shoves replaced by silence. Quinn's smirks faded, her gossip losing its bite. Riley, the enigma, caught my eye once, his nod so subtle I almost missed it, like he was recalibrating what strength meant. I nodded back, not friendly, just honest, and kept sketching, my pencil a tether to the girl I was before all this. The school changed in ways I hadn't expected. The 100-foot hallways grew quieter, no more locker slams, no more books knocked from hands. Kids I'd never spoken to met my gaze, their eyes holding respect, not fear. I felt it in the debate team, where Aisha, my sophomore partner, stood taller, her stutter softening as she argued with a fire I'd helped kindle. You showed them, Lena, she said after practice, her smile wide, and I shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. I hadn't meant to show anyone anything, I just refused to shrink. Ms. Evelyn Brooks, our coach, watched me closely, her gray-streaked hair catching the light. You didn't break the rules, Lena, she said, her voice soft but firm. You broke their illusions. Her words settled deep, and I wondered if she knew how heavy it was to carry that change, to be the spark when all I wanted was to belong. A new idea bloomed, a school unity council, proposed by Aisha during a student assembly. She stood on the 200-seat auditorium stage, her voice trembling but clear, calling for a group to bridge divides. Lena's mural inspired me, she said, pointing to my art contest design, now reinstated after Quinn's sabotage was exposed. The crowd of 400 students clapped, and my face burned, not with shame but with a quiet pride. I joined the council, meeting weekly in a cramped classroom, sketching ideas for events while Aisha led discussions. We planned a mural unveiling, my 100-foot design of hands weaving unity set to grace the gym wall. Kids like Jamal, a shy freshman, joined too, his hesitant voice growing bolder as we talked about fairness. I saw myself in him, the kid who'd arrived in Asheville feeling like a stranger, and I listened, my silence a space for him to grow. Outside school, I started a mentorship podcast with Ms. Rosa at the River Arts District, recording stories of resilience for the community. We sat in her 300-foot studio, her dreadlocks swaying as she spoke of marching in the 60s, her voice a river of courage. "You're not just painting walls, Lena," she said, her eyes bright. "You're painting futures." I shared my story too, my voice steady as I spoke of facing Elliot, of choosing restraint over rage. The podcast aired locally, reaching 1,000 listeners, and I got emails from strangers saying my words gave them hope. At home, in my 40-foot backyard, I practiced taekwondo, my kicks sharper, my dad's voice clear, "Your peace is your power." I wasn't fighting anymore, but I was building, each move a step toward a world that saw me. Elliot's shadow lingered, though. I heard he was struggling at his new school, his charm failing without an audience. I didn't hate him, I pitied the boy who'd built his worth on fear, only to find it hollow. His absence left a void, but others filled it. In the cafeteria, a girl named Sophia sat with me one day, her tray clattering as she asked about my mural. "It's dope," she said, and we talked, not about Elliot but about art, her shy smile a bridge I hadn't expected. Aisha joined us sometimes, her laughter light, and I felt a shift, not just in the school but in me. I wasn't alone anymore, not fully, and that scared me as much as it warmed me. I'd spent so long guarding my heart, my silence a fortress, that letting people in felt like stepping into a storm. The drama peaked at the mural unveiling, a chilly evening with 500 students and parents gathered outside the gym. My design glowed under floodlights, hands weaving across 100 feet of brick, a testament to unity. I stood beside Aisha, my heart pounding, when Jamal took the mic, his voice cracking as he thanked me for mentoring him. "Lena showed me I belong," he said, and the crowd cheered, the sound wrapping me like a blanket. Ms. Brooks nodded from the sidelines, Ms. Rosa clapped, and I felt tears prick my eyes, not of sadness but of something deeper, gratitude for surviving long enough to see this. But as I scanned the crowd, I saw Riley, alone, his eyes unreadable. He didn't clap, just watched, and I wondered what he carried, what Elliot's fall had left behind. I knew then that change wasn't complete, that some wounds lingered, but I also knew I'd planted something lasting. The Unity Council grew, planning a spring festival to celebrate diversity. I led a taekwondo demonstration, my kicks precise under the stadium lights, 300 students watching, not for a fight but for art in motion. Aisha emceed, her stutter gone, her voice a beacon. Sophia sketched the event, her drawings joining my mural in the school newsletter, now free of Quinn's venom. At the River Arts District, I painted a new mural, a figure rising from ashes, Ms. Rosa's hand guiding mine. "You're unstoppable, Lena," she said, and I believed her, not because I'd won but because I'd endured. Back at school, I sat in the cafeteria, Sophia and Aisha across from me, our silence comfortable, a shared understanding that we'd changed something bigger than ourselves. But as I sketched, I felt a new weight. Not of fear, but of responsibility, knowing the seeds we'd planted needed tending, and that the real fight was keeping this change alive. The mural's hand stretched across the gym wall, a 100-foot weave of unity glowing under Asheville's spring sun, but it was the quiet moments that told me the world had shifted. I'm Lena Carter, a 17-year-old black girl, 5'7", with braids and a heart carved by my dad's taekwondo lessons and 5 months of battles I never sought. At Asheville High, a 1,000-student school in North Carolina, I'd gone from stranger to spark, not because I wanted to be a hero but because I refused to be erased. The 120-yard football field where I'd sidestepped Elliot Harper's punch, his 6'3" frame falling as I said, "I don't fight people who need to prove they're enough," was a memory now, his transfer to Raleigh a fading echo. As I walked the 50-foot hallways, my sketchbook lighter, I felt the weight of what I'd built, not a crown, but a legacy, one that asked me to keep tending its roots. The school's air was new, like a window cracked open after a storm. Kids didn't whisper, "trouble," as I passed, they offered nods, some shy, others solid, a respect earned through months of standing firm. In the 120-foot cafeteria, I sat with Aisha and Sophia, our trays clattering as we planned the Unity Council Spring Festival, a 500-person celebration with music and student art. Aisha, my debate partner, had shed her stutter, her voice a beacon as she pitched a poetry stage, her eyes alight. "You made this possible, Lena," she said, and I shook my head, uneasy with praise. I hadn't planned to change anything, I just held my ground. Sophia, her sketches now gracing the school newsletter, drew a festival banner beside me, her quiet strength a mirror of my own. I sketched too, my murals now bridges spanning rivers, and felt a warmth I hadn't known when I arrived in Asheville, a sense of belonging that scared me as much as it steadied me. The Unity Council became a movement, launching a citywide youth summit at the Asheville Community Center, a 300-foot hall where 800 teens from Buncombe County tackled equity. I led a workshop, my voice steady as I shared my journey, not the showdown, but the silence I'd wielded, the choice to create instead of curse. Jamal, the freshman I mentored, spoke too, his voice trembling but true, "Lena taught me I'm enough." The crowd clapped, and I blinked back tears, not for myself but for him, for every kid finding their place. Ms. Evelyn Brooks, our debate coach, watched, her gray-streaked hair catching the light, her nod a silent vow, "You're not alone." Her words lingered, and I realized she'd seen my weight from the start, the burden of being the only one who looked like me in a school that hadn't wanted me. My podcast with Mess. Rosa at the River Arts District hit 5,000 listeners, each episode a testament to endurance. We recorded a memorial mural episode for a 200-foot wall near Pack Square, honoring Asheville's unsung heroes, activists, dreamers, my dad. I painted him in gold, his taekwondo stance eternal, his eyes on the stars. "He sees you," Ms. Rosa said, her dreadlocks swaying, her hand steadying mine as I choked up. I missed him, but he lived in my kicks, practiced in my 40-foot backyard, in my choice to redirect hate into hope. The mural unveiling drew 1,000 people, including Riley, Elliot's former shadow, who stood apart, his silence no longer cold but curious. I nodded to him, he nodded back, and I felt a bridge form, not of friendship but of understanding, a step towards something new. Elliot wasn't gone, not really. Word reached me that he was back in Asheville, working at a cafe downtown, his football glory dimmed. His dad's demands had broken him, and my refusal to bow had cracked his facade. I didn't rejoice, I mourned the boy who'd needed fear to feel whole. One evening, I performed a taekwondo demonstration in the 200-foot gym, 400 students watching my kicks flow like water, not to harm but to heal. Afterward, Elliot appeared, leaner, his eyes heavy with sleepless nights. "I was wrong, Lena," he said, his voice raw. "About you, about what strength is." I met his gaze, my heart calm, and saw a boy unlearning his past. "You said that for you," I replied, not absolving but acknowledging. He nodded, a flicker of relief in his eyes, and walked away, not a villain but a soul starting over. The summit was the crescendo, an April Saturday with 800 teens filling the community center, their voices a symphony of change. I closed the event, my speech about silence. Not the kind that cowers, but the kind that commands. "I came to Asheville a stranger," I said, my eyes sweeping the crowd, but I stayed because I knew my worth. The applause thundered, Aisha and Sophia cheering, Jamal beaming. Ms. Rosa clapped, Ms. Brooks nodded, and I felt my dad's presence, his lessons alive in me. Riley approached after, his voice soft, "I'm sorry, Lena, for standing by." I nodded, his apology a weight lifted, not for me but for him. The school wasn't perfect. Old scars lingered, quiet judgments persisted, but it was growing, listening, seeing. As spring bloomed, I walked the 50-foot hallways, my sneakers steady, my sketchbook full of bridges. I thought of my journey, the racism that met me, whispers, lies, Elliot's fist inches from my face, and the microaggressions that cut deeper than taunts. I'd had little support at first, just my dad's lessons and a sketchbook, but I'd found tools in Ms. Rosa's wisdom, Aisha's fire, Ms. Brooks's faith. I learned that strength isn't loud, it's the quiet choice to stand, to create, to endure. I learned silence can be a sword, cutting through hate without drawing blood. I learned that change starts with one voice, one step, one refusal to shrink. Most of all, I learned that being me, black, bold, unbroken, was my greatest power, a light no one could dim. I sketch now, a final mural of a girl with braids, her roots deep, her arms open to the sky. Asheville High moves with me, not behind or ahead, but beside, because they see me now, not as trouble but as truth. If you were in my shoes, facing racism and microaggressions, with few allies or tools, how would you approach it to forge the best outcome? Would you find your silence, your art, your stance, and let them speak? I don't have all the answers, but I know this: your worth is your weapon, and your presence, unapologetic and whole, can change the air, one quiet breath at a time.